Jazz Club. Really flying the music. Okay.
Hello. It's Thursday night. It's Thursday night, 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and um, this would be the time the Cosby Show would be airing, and tonight we're giving you episode 12 of the death of Cliff Huxtable, and as I conveyed a few times over the course of the last couple episodes, we have moved into a new home. My family has relocated from the city of Houston proper to the city of Cypress, which splits the difference nearly in half, splits my commute nearly in half between the city of Houston and Prairie View, Texas. As you know, I teach at Prairie View A&M University. And up until today, I had an hour commute each way. And it was just hard. It just grew harder and harder to go to a place that I absolutely love. So we decided to move closer, and I'm very happy to say we're unpacking boxes right up until go time tonight. Don't let this fool you, though. I mean, I pretty much isolated a corner where I could put, a look together so I can be ready for tonight. But I do want to introduce you to what is shaping up as our study, our library. I call it the TDV PhD wing, where I am going to spend quite a bit of my time working my way through this PhD program. But I really wanted to create a space that was conducive to comfort and reading and some writing. Typewriter. I'm not using my typewriter for the program right now, but I still use it. I mean, we've talked about this before in the past. I do love my typewriter. I do have a couple pictures to share with you about the process, just because. Tell you what, start off. Let me just show you right quick. I'm not even going to try to act like, I'm not even going to try to act like we're anywhere near done with the unpacking process, but I had to just get on for a bit of joy with you all tonight. Laura's going to cue up a couple photos of this space, like a before and after sort of situation. Before we moved in, this was the look. Oh, she got it. This was the look of the house before we moved anything in this particular room, right? Before we moved anything in, this is what is shaping up to be our library / on the other side of it, the dining room, but I'll show it to you some other time. And then the next photo is after the moving trucks dumped everything in the space last night, like dumped. And by dumped, I mean, I I looked down and they were just unloading the house in this one spot. And I was like, oh my God, I got to pick up every single thing and move it from this spot so that I can create, this space. But it still worked out. So the next photo is where I ended up last night. I say around midnight, making my way through the mess. And then later today, this is what it's starting to look like. Now this is still incomplete. There's still some other pieces of furniture I want to put in there, but then my handy dandy trusty typewriter has a little bit of a home right there in front of the window as well, with that final photo there. And that's my Diva Blue chair. I like that. That's my Big Mama chair. One of my Big Mama chairs. I have another Big Mama chair upstairs. But the house is awesome and we love it. And we're still unpacking, but we're going to take a pause and all of that to talk to you about Clair and how she's feeling having lost her partner, Cliff. Tonight's episode, we're going to sit with the matriarch of the Huxtable family, someone that many of our past actors and our past panelists have identified as their favorite character or the character with whom they most identify. And we're going to hear from her tonight. Before we, get into our talent, I'm going to give my regular message of wear your mask. We are seeing numbers soar, still continue to climb. I think we're pretty much the only country on the planet at this point where numbers are still climbing. And so much of that can be kind of staved off by simply wearing your mask when you go out and engage in the world. You'd probably notice that, that circle of people who are affected is growing closer and closer and closer to you as more and more people are finding out whether or not they're infected, or you may know someone whose family has been impacted deeply by the virus. We're hearing more and more stories of, I didn't think it was a real thing, and then I went to so-and-so's birthday party, and now 30 people have it. This is nothing to play with. And so if at the very least you can do is just, wear a mask, I think it's a small act for such a big consequence. All right, I'll leave that there. Tonight, we're going to read Clair.
The house is quiet. I am sitting in the bedroom on the edge of my bed alone. I've never known a life in this house without my husband. I hear countless echoes of "good night" in my mind from the repast. I am restless, and I will not sleep tonight. This house is quiet, and I am alone.
Good morning, my love.
Good morning, Heath Clifford. It's Saturday. You sure you don't want to sleep a little bit later than 5:45 a.m.?
No, ma'am. I'm up. I don't have to go anywhere today, and I want to enjoy the whole entire day.
Well, okay, that's my point exactly. You have the whole entire day away from patients, away from the hospital, away from your students, away from the kids, and away from the grandkids.
I know. And that has to change.
That last conversation with Russell got to you, huh?
Claire, technology has taken over, and we don't see our kids anymore.
We see them.
That skip.
Well, it's Skype.
Whatever. It doesn't count. And I know it's Skype. Baby, I was just checking to make sure you're up to speed on your hipness.
Oh, yeah, because you are so with it, huh, Cliff? So what's going on?
Claire, we should go and visit with each of our children and visit with them. If they won't come to us, well, then we'll go to them.
Okay.
Okay. That's it. That's all you got?
Would you like something else?
At 6 in the morning?
5:45.
At 5:45 in the morning. I'm having an epiphany, and all you can say is okay.
And what is your epiphany? That we need to go and see our children and grandchildren?
Yeah.
Cliff, that's not an epiphany. See, that's Saturday. That's a Saturday morning. If you want to visit the children, let's visit the children. But also, let me say, the children need to come around here more often. And let the record show.
Oh, Lord. Here we go with the record. It's always time to show the record.
We do visit them more often than the reverse. We've made our rounds. These people are younger and more spry than us.
Oh, wait. Speak for yourself, fair lady. I am plenty spry. Now, let me show you how spry I am.
Cliff, I am not spending my Saturday in the emergency room again because you got spry on your mind.
Oh, baby, it's not just on my mind.
Put that away before you hurt yourself. Wait a minute. Did you take one of those little blue pills this morning while I was asleep?
A doctor never discusses if he self-medicates.
And a judge knows how to cast a sentence of probation for disobedient and the wretched.
You wouldn't dare.
Let the record show.
Touché. Now kiss me, woman.
I open my arms and embrace my husband as he rests into my bosom. Our closeness is all Cliff really wants. It's all he ever wanted, to be close to me. I hold my husband, stroking his white hair and humming him back to sleep. My care is what he needs of me right now. The house it's quiet, except the faint sound of the television in the living room. Cliff! I call for Cliff from the kitchen, and there's no answer. I'm bringing in groceries from the car, placing them on the kitchen counter. Cliff, I'm back with the blue crabs. I go back out to retrieve one last bag of groceries. I come back in and call for Cliff again. Okay, Cliff. I can hear the television, so I know you're in the next room. Come in here and help me with these crabs. Still no answer. It isn't like Cliff to ignore me. Trying not to worry. Okay, buddy, no crabs for you tonight. I've called 3 times at the kitchen door to go into the living room. Cliff! I see the television on, but no one in the living room watching it. Cliff must be in the bathroom. Cliff, I'm back for crabs for time. Are you upstairs? Still no answer. I cross the room towards the stairs and find Cliff lying on the floor. Cliff! Cliff, can you hear me? Cliff! I have to call 911. Yes, Cliff is Huxtable at 10 Stanwood. He's having a heart attack. Please send an ambulance and come to the front of the house this time. And hurry. Okay, thank you.
Claire.
Yes. Shh. I hear you. Don't try to speak. Save your energy. The ambulance is on the way.
Claire. Don't let them keep me this time. Let me come home. I'm tired, and I don't want to stay there. Don't let them keep me.
Stop trying your own doctor. Let's get Dr. Burns first. You need to stay calm and you need to relax.
Now, Claire, you promised me. I want to come home.
I reassure Cliff that I will take care of him and all will be as he wants it. But first, we must go to the hospital. The ambulance arrives and the medics enter the front door with urgency and familiarity. They've done this before for Dr. Huxtable. As the medics get Cliff on the gurney, he makes me promise once more that he will be able to come home. I promise Cliff his wish. My promise is what Cliff needs of me right now. The house is quiet, except the occasional bursts of laughter coming from my bedroom. Eunice, Chantilly, and Cliff are visiting, and I am biting back every ounce of vinegar I have building up. All I want to do right now is walk into my bedroom and kick that low-down, no-count heifer out of my house. But no. Today, for my husband, I will be the bigger woman, and I will demonstrate grace and God, while Eunice Chantilly is sitting in my bedroom with my husband in my house, wearing that tacky wooden beret. Did Cliff buy her that beret? He better not have bought Eunice Chantilly that beret. You know what? Let me find out he bought. You know what? No. Stop it, Claire. Stop it now. That is your husband, and you trust him. Even if you don't trust Eunice Chantilly the length of an inchworm, you trust him. Yes, I do. I trust my husband. My husband. Another burst of laughter seeps through the cracks of my bedroom walls, followed by an
Oh, Bucky. Oh, you are something else.
I want to bust that whole entire door down. Oh, Bucky? What is she in there doing? Talking about, oh, Bucky. What is Bucky in there doing? No. No. Pull it together, Claire. You are a rational woman. You are Mrs. Heathcliff Huxtable, have been for 50 years. And Eunice Chantilly has nothing, except that tacky barrette.
Oh my goodness, Bucky. Oh, you are something else. You are too much. Now you know you need to stop.
Yes, Bucky, you need to stop. She's got but one more old Bucky before I...
Bucky? Now look, that ain't the way I remember it.
All I want to know is, what are they in the room reminiscing over? Well, are they remembering the time they fell in love? Are they remembering the church trips when I would see Cliff and Eunice Chantilly sitting with each other on the bus? Are they remembering the time Cliff promised to take Eunice to her senior prom, but missed it because he was sitting by the lake with me? A sadness washes over me as I remember the look on Eunice Chantilly's face when she came over that hill in her prom dress, calling for Bucky, only to find him kissing me by the lake. You know, I won the man through some persuasion and some theft, but Cliff was mine. And I sit back down in my chair. And for the next hour, I'll listen as old friends. Well, they remember and they laugh. Through grace and God, I found the peace in myself to allow the only woman I worried could ever take Cliff away to spend an intimate afternoon with my husband in my bedroom. Bucky is saying goodbye to his first love, and my grace is what Cliff needs of me right now. The house it's quiet until the phone rings for the 100th time today. I'm supposed to plan the funeral, but I'm sitting on the edge of my bed. Staring into the opposite wall seems to be all I have the strength to do right now. The funeral is set for next week, and in that time, there's a lot to accomplish. I will select what Cliff will wear. I will arrange the order of events for the funeral. I will host the repast. I will handle it all, and all will be handled in the typical, elegant Clair Huxtable way. I'm in full control, and my resolve to see the entire family through the funeral is what Cliff needs of me right now. House is quiet. Finally, again. The funeral was smooth and well executed, as far as funerals can be good. The choir sang all of Cliff's favorite hymns, and the Reverend Al Sharpton spoke a few words, as did fellow Dr. Ben Carson, both of whom respected Cliff as a man of the community, as a man of service, a man of medicine, and as a man of God. Cliff honored his relationships with important people in the city, but he favored his family above all else. And while most marveled at his connections with the great and the famous, his greatest ally was his wife, and also his best friend. Cliff had a champion in me. The repast was flawless. There was a balance of grief and of joy, of tears of sorrow and from laughter. All our children, well, all but Denise, indulged the visitors with tales of better times with Dr. Huxtable and inquiries on their lives. Constant questions like, well, how you holding up? And, well, are you making it okay? And, well, you'll let me know if I can do anything for you, right? Began to really irritate me. I am not fragile. I am not on the brink of falling apart. I exuded confidence and strength the entire evening and never once let a crack show. But why? Who was that for? Why not fall apart? and allow someone else to catch me or pick up the pieces. The last 2 weeks have been long. Caring for my husband as he lay dying in our bed, he wants to be home his final days, receiving family and friends and Eunice Chantilly in his final moments. The exhaustion of portraying the dutiful and strong wife has taken a toll on me. Well, Heath Clifford, you made it to the finish. You made it. Cliff. Oh, my darling love. I cry. I fall to my knees. No one is left for me. No one stayed because no one thinks I'm vulnerable. No one stayed for me because I'm always strength and fortitude personified. The only one to ever catch me? Cliff. My spirit breaks on the floor of my bedroom as the life of my husband no longer resides there. I cry the lament of 1,000,000 broken hearts and abandoned loves. The keening, relentless, the moans from a depth of sorrow I have never known in my life exhausts me. And it ultimately helps me to sleep in my clothes in the middle of the bedroom floor. The morning sun pours through my bedroom window, kissing my face, just as Cliff had nearly every morning for 50 years. A slight smile creeps upon my face as I mistake the rising sun for the warmth of Cliff's love. Rolling over, expecting to greet my husband with a comforting, "Good morning." My arm hits the bed frame at the foot of the bed. I had slept there all night, still in my clothes from the previous day. I sit up and lean against the bed's footboard. Cliff, thank you, love you, loved me, and I thank you. You gave me 5 beautiful souls, and our children gave me new life every time I gave life to them. You brought so many lives into this world, but no soul was touched in a more profound way than the way you touched me. Thank you. This house is quiet.
The house is indeed quiet. Claire closes her eyes and feels the sunlight kiss her face. She sings "We Belong Together." It's a song she used to sing with, for her father. Today she sings it for Cliff. As she sings, Claire gets up from the floor and removes yesterday's clothes, yesterday's sorrow. She puts on her robe and sits on the edge of her bed. Cliff is gone, and the house is quiet. And Claire is alone. We're going to get right into our panel discussion and uphold Claire, lift her up as she and all of us discuss life after losing your partner. Our panel includes Taya Dunn Johnson. Taya resides in Baltimore, where there is big fun with the wretched. She's in Baltimore City. She is an author, a speaker, a storytelling coach, grief counselor, and workshop facilitator. Her husband died suddenly in June of 2012, leaving her a widow at 35 with a son, a 3.5-year-old nonverbal boy living with autism. Over the last 8 years, she has worked relentlessly to rebuild both their lives. Taya has used her personal challenges as a young widow and solo parent to a child with autism to strengthen the community around her through writing, speaking, and performing advocacy work. Taya is a published author and the vice president on the board for the Autism Society of Baltimore Chesapeake. This woman, y'all don't understand how brilliant and amazing and just beautiful. Look at this picture. Wait until you meet her in person. The spirit of this woman is just phenomenal. We appreciate her being here today. We also have returning Risikat Okedeyi. She is a phenomenal person, owner of Little So-So Productions, LLC. She is a healer. If you have a chance on the weekends, or even during the week, you can watch the show during the week in repeat. Kat has her show, Kat Corner, and it is just extraordinary to watch her interview brilliant, amazing, mountain-moving women who are healers, who are teachers, who are extraordinary citizens of the world. You've seen Kat here on the show already as a previous panelist, but we've asked her to participate in this conversation tonight as well because of her work as a teacher and as a healer and as a guide. And we're just thankful to have her back with us tonight. So with Taya and Kat, we also have our cast members who are staying with us, Velicia and Darryl. And this is a much smaller, more intimate group by design. Typically we have, this big raucous conversation about some of these topics, and we have 11 people on the screen, and, Laura's back there, spinning plates and juggling faces and trying to get everyone's screen time. But tonight, by design, we really wanted to keep this somewhat quiet and much more intimate. And we've asked the right people who understand the power of community when healing. And we're in a state of healing right now, dealing with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching families just, endure just some of the most bizarre and in some cases unnecessary pain. How are you all doing right now? How are you doing, Velicia? We're going to start with Velicia and go around the bend clockwise and check in with everyone before. Look at
I am
Terrence
better.
Toliver. Let's back it up for me, Laura, to Terrence Toliver's. Yeah, give it some extra special love to
He
his dear
has
wife,
to say
Velicia.
that. That's the thing.
I don't know. I think that's some genuine care for you for doing such a
Yeah.
great job. Tell us how you're doing today.
Yeah, my oldest son, who's 28, got his COVID diagnosis today. And so like Terésa was saying, I think that as the age group is getting kind of younger, it was always real to us, but I think it's kind of very surreal right now. So it was a rough morning, but I think we're all in a better place, just trying to adjust to life with COVID.
Yeah. How is he doing?
He's so far so good. He's young and he's pretty resilient, but his workplace had just a lot of unsafe measures. But yeah, I think it's starting to hit that age group really differently now,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we're better.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this earlier today, and I just want to reiterate for hopefully comfort's sake. At this point, we're getting to the point where we're all starting to know someone. Like it's growing closer and closer.
Yeah.
I know this is an odd thing to say in terms of words of encouragement, but it's an easy virus to catch. It's not like you have to do, 50-11 very specific things in order to catch it. It is so incredibly easy. In fact, in this move, Michelle and I will be tested again ourselves next week, just because we've had so many people in and out of this house between the movers, and we've, had things delivered here, and it just requires extra measures because it's so easy to catch. And so, any random thing could be in play. So just, my prayers to your family, and he's strong. He's going to be all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kat, how you doing?
Child. So I'm teaching in the midst of all of this for the summer, and I have to say that I'm exhausted. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a rough week. It really has. Like, this is the thing I've been looking forward to. I'm like, at least I'll get to see people and hang out a little bit. But it has not been an easy week. Thank God for my trainer, because that was it. Being able to at least have sessions with him has kept me off the edge, but I've been dangling my feet on the edge. Like, you know what? If one more person says one more thing out of pocket, it's going to be a problem. I might catch a case. So I'm thankful to be here.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful read, Velicia. I was just moved by, man, you really captured Claire. So I'm just honored to be part. I'm just honored to be here.
Thank you.
Excellent. That visual of sitting, just kind of hanging out with your feet dangling over the edge, like just let one more person try me today. Wow. Yeah. Hey, Darryl, how you feeling, brother? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm great. I'm great. I hope in my real life, my Claire will be just as magnanimous as Velicia was tonight. You did a marvelous job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't go wrong. I just, you know. Let me tell you how. Let me just quickly say how we ended up with Velicia as our Claire. I met Velicia in August, last August, almost a year ago now, in our first class, our first orientation for our particular cohort, and right out the gate from day one, there's this voice and there's this elegance, there's this sort of elevated sensibility of, we're not, for lack of better words, we're not here for the bullshit. Yeah. We are here to get this PhD and keep it moving. And all was missing was let the record show. I mean, like that was the only thing missing from her presence. And then every class, it was almost like, you were waiting for something pretty brilliant. And then I think in our first higher education administration class, we were paired up as a team for an assignment. And then the assignment changed, and I was like, well, damn, I don't get to actually do the work with this woman, but we did spend a little time just kind of chatting and get to know. And then I finally asked her, I said, it's almost like asking her if she would be my prom date or something. I was like, you be my Claire for this project? And here we are. It's pretty awesome. Hey, Taya.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Hanging in there, all is well here. Pushing forward every day like everybody else. We've been on pretty strict no contact protocols over here. We've been homebound since March 15th. So our house and our yard, and that's about it. So we'll start crazy, but safe and healthy. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on board with us tonight. We have the DMV strong in the house tonight.
All right.
And I appreciate everyone giving your time tonight. Terrence is working overtime right now, Velicia, just so you know. Let's start off by talking about this chapter and certainly about Velicia's read, and we'll talk some about Phylicia Rashad's portrayal of Claire. I think we've spent a lot of time in various other chapters talking about magnanimous is the word that keeps coming up. Absolutely, just elegant and stellar in her presence. But I really wanted to kind of undo her a little bit. She was always presenting so refined. In the face of such loss, what happens to that shine? Walk us through, as much as you mind, Taya, what happens when your world changes in such a way?
Thank goodness I was a writer. I was able to put some of it into words because it's a feeling and an experience unlike any other. There's a pro and a con to being as strong as we perceive the Claire character to be. And that's true in real life for new widows, particularly Black women. We are expected to be pillars of strength. We are expected to hold everybody else down. We are expected to be in complete control, even when our worlds are falling apart. The people closest to us, they give us permission to fall apart, but within reason, within boundaries. And what happens is people say things like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe how strong you are. Oh my gosh, you're so graceful in the midst of this. How are you standing? How are you not crying all the time? How are you not this? People have preconceived notions of what a widow should be, how a widow should act, especially in the very beginning. And so what happens is the emotional feelings and everything that you're going through versus what the world, society, and oftentimes even your inner circle puts on you is a tremendous weight to bear.
Wow.
You know, the best description that I have ever been able to come up with about what immediate grief feels like when you lose your partner is that it is a loss unlike any other because the air around you has changed. The composition of the air you breathe is instantly different.
Wow.
So it's different than losing a friend, a sibling, a parent, even a child. And I'm not saying that any of those losses are less. So let me be clear about that. But this is different. This is the type of loss that immediately, instantly, within minutes, changes everything about the world you know. Your emotional state, your financial state, your family state, everything changes in an instant. And the one person that you would go to when something major and catastrophic happens is the person who is now gone. So you are catapulted into an immediate state of confusion, despair. I almost can't think of enough words to fill it in. So then to have to pull it together and to be the voice of reason, the picture of grace, the picture of strength, you know, the image of finesse, you know, the person who, you know, is gracious under fire. They're still able to, you know, communicate with everyone civilly, you know, without emotional outbursts and things of that nature. That's a tremendous burden to add on top of everything else. So, you know, having, you know, your script address that and, you know, Velicia was able to, you know, really put emotion to it. And when she says, you know, why? For who? You know, why am I still holding this together? Why do I have to be the impeccable Clair? Why do I have to be this way? But it's hard to explain what that pressure feels like. And in the moment, I know very few widows who have not fallen victim to it, truthfully. So yeah, that's what I could say about that.
Velicia, what do you feel like was there something you were able to tap into that channeled? Clearly, we have your husband on here communicating very eloquently and extensively his admiration for your acting skills and for the woman that you are on planet Earth. However, what did you tap into so that what Taya experienced in real life seemed familiar in your performance?
She gave really good tips. I think the first thing that she said was like she mentioned the rollover part in the morning, and that almost you almost forgot, you know, that this had happened. You thought it was a bad dream in that instant. Also, we talked about like the empty nest, kind of the house being constantly quiet. And my youngest just moved out in May, and so, you know, empty nest is kind of settling in. It hasn't all the way kind of kicked in. I think COVID has us all kind of all over the place. But I think for me, the notion that this is, you know, I've raised 7 human beings and every single one of them is now kind of off into the world doing their own thing. And, you know, it was challenging. It was a lot of fun. But now life is going to be different, you know, whereas I was always responsible for somebody and always had, you know, people around to talk to share things with, or that's kind of, you know, it's just my husband and I now. So that was a point, I think, but really trying to wrap my mind around kind of what she said about, I lost a sister who was 18 in 2001. And that feeling, when she said that about, there's this instant when you wake up the very next day that you kind of almost think, was that, you know? So for me, that was the closest that I could kind of conjure what that sentiment, what that feeling might be like.
Yeah.
Channeled it well.
What resonated for you, Kat, in the reading of this, and in your life? Not to exploit any sort of hurt or loss, but have you? What experience could you tether to those feelings that you felt as a result of hearing the reading tonight?
So I became a matriarch at 19 because my mom died suddenly. And I'm the oldest of five, the oldest of six, but five for my mother, and I'm Nigerian. So the expectations that I sort of step into that role, there was no choice. It was just something I had to do. I was going to University of Florida. I had to transfer to University of Maryland because my family had moved back up here. And so the parts where Claire is talking through, there have been so many times throughout my life. My mom died at 19, and then 10 years later, our youngest sister, Sophie, died. And because of our age difference, it was like losing a child. But I didn't have her. I didn't physically bring her into the world, but at 6, I became her de facto mother. And then by the time she was 15, she died in the house that the room that we're sitting in was her room, and she died in this room. And so I've had to manage. I basically went through an identity crisis, to be honest with you, because I wasn't sure how to operate anymore. And there are parts in the way that you capture Claire where that internal dialogue is what I'm having. There were plenty of times where I wanted nothing more than to fall the hell out. Like I wanted to like cry and scream and like be like the white women get to be. Because white women, when their husbands die or when somebody dies, and it's like all of that, I wanted that. And because of how I was raised and because of the role that I was forced into, even at my sister's gravesite, I had a dramatic, I remember sitting there, it was raiding my family's Muslim, so there was a whole bunch of shit that went with that. And I remember running up the hill because they are very unceremonious about Islamic deaths. Like you die and the next day they wrap you up, they put you on the ground. So I'm running up to get to the gravesite. And I remember standing there thinking there needs to be more drama. This is so dramatic. Something needs to happen. Like my sister is dead. This child that I've been raising is dead. And they're putting her on the ground as if I don't exist because I'm a woman and all the bullshit that comes with it. And I remember all of a sudden it started to rain. And I fell to my knees, and my stepmother, the first one, comes over to me, and she's trying to talk me out of having this display. And she says, "This doesn't look good. You need to get up."
Wow.
And I'm in my head, I am literally dangling on the edge of, I swear to God, I'm going to punch someone and I'm going to start screaming, and I'm not going to be able to stop screaming because they're putting my child into the ground. And my brother stepped in, and I remember hearing him say, this is the youngest of us, he said, "We will stay here as long as she needs us to. We got this." My dad starts yelling at me, "Get up. I can't believe you. Why are you doing this?" And the friends that had come to like help me, I felt their energy, and I felt my ancestors all stand in front like, this is not the day for that. But I remember wanting to scream and physically not being able to do it because of all of the training around what Black girls do and how Black girls don't emote, and you're the oldest and all the bullshit that comes with that. So even listening to that part where she's talking in her head, I've been there. I know what that's like. And you want, like, there's a part of you that wants to like fall out. Like I would have, if I thought I could get away with it, I would have thrown myself into the grave just because I was like, I want some sort of release. But there was this automatic switch that would not let me be free. And so I was stuck and screaming on the inside. And I remember everyone started arguing. And I'm trying to have a moment and people are arguing. And I jumped up and just walked back to the car because I was like, I can't even have this moment. So fuck it, I'm going to go home. And I didn't speak to my dad for months after that. We almost didn't make it from that almost ruined our relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting that you were also a panelist on the episode about Black women and pain.
Yeah.
And the unavailable access to either feeling it or even expressing it or showing it.
Mhm.
And so, right, I think it's interesting that you, even in jest, but
Right.
it's serious. It is a real thing that we're not given the option even
Right.
in the same sense
Right.
of conveying our pain.
Because God forbid you refer to
basically-
as being dramatic. That's
Right.
like the worst thing in the world. But somebody just died. So if you want to roll on the floor and scream and throw things, you should be able to do that. But there's something inside of you as a Black woman that, like, it just, you can't even access it. Like, I wanted to have an emotional response, and I literally could not. I could see it, but I couldn't touch it.
Sure.
So I understand where there is in that space.
Yeah. What happens to Black men? Not that I'm asking you to speak for all Black men, Darryl, but you're kind of representing the brothers right now.
I feel sorry for the brothers.
In your experience, in your single solitary experience, what resources are available? Do you feel like are available to you for expressing pain, especially in light of devastating loss or just conveying emotions in general? Going back to this text, I mean, the next episode is your turn. And we've talked in rehearsals about even the apprehension you feel about even getting to that episode, because you don't want this life to end, in a sense. You don't want to experience that departure. Tell us about how do you manage that pain? Not so much for the script, but in your life, how do you manage that pain?
I think we have, as Black men, pretty much the same, if not worse, situation that Black women have. I remember my dad died tragically in an automobile accident, but he had 85 great years of life before that. The unexpectedness of it was and the terrible thing is the auto exploded and caught on fire, and I had to have a ceremony with just a set of retainers. Was the only thing in the box that we put in the ground. But I remember some of my a lot of my colleagues from the legislature came down to my dad's homegoing, and everyone, the message that they kept telling me is, you have to be strong, you have to stay composed. And then my mentor came over to me and he said, you do not have to be strong, you do not have to be composed. If you want to cry, cry.
Nice.
But the peer pressure still got to me, and I had to be strong, and I had to be composed, and it almost ruined my life. I mean, it just threw me way out of kilter. And Black men do not have a release valve, because we don't want to be, oh, he got punked out. All of that nonsense from the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
But we buy into that, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And it's interesting that in your explanation just now, you expressed someone giving you permission, as well as you still battling back shame. You call it peer pressure of not wanting to succumb to your emotions or show emotions. But how do we relinquish the shame of conveying an expression that is so natural and, as you said, so necessary? For lest we will sit on the edge, Kat, with our feet dangling, or needing that release valve to be released, Darryl. I mean, it's only natural to mourn. How do we balance Taya, how do we balance those things that we need versus you know, the physical things that we need, the spiritual things that we need versus society's expectations or our own people's expectations of us?
I think a big part of it, especially for me, I'm a big advocate for therapy. I would not have survived the loss of my husband without having therapy, without having prescription medication in the very beginning, and without having a release. My release was my writing. I felt like I was writing for myself. It was a catharsis, but I also felt like no one had really. When my husband died, the youngest widow that I knew was probably 70 years old. And, you know, again, not diminishing loss, but old people pass away. So usually, you know, the older ladies at the church, all those kind of people, we knew them. No one had experienced the death of someone my husband's age, 35, and 36 rather, and I was 35. So no one knew how to talk to me. No one knew how to deal with me. They weren't sure what to say or what to do, you know, and especially with a 3.5-year-old son. And we'd been together since I was 15 years old in high school. So he was my entire life, so to speak. So for me, it was trying to find space to express what and how I was feeling. And in sharing how I felt, I was hoping to be vulnerable enough to open the door for other people to understand what I was feeling. So I felt like in opening myself up, I was granting permission to other people to also open themselves up to whatever they were feeling, and perhaps to change their perception of how they thought a widow should be. You know, I cried a lot in the very beginning. I cried a lot for years, never as much as the first 2 years, but I cried a lot. And part of what sometimes buoyed me was the random emails I would get from around the country, around the world. You know, someone would say, "Oh my goodness, you know, I read your piece about being offended you were called a single mother. And my husband died 3 years ago, and I feel the exact same way. I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know what to say, but you captured the words exactly." And I said to myself, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm trying to help with. These are the people who need to hear me. Give them permission to live this life in widowhood. Because, you know, in this country, you know, we deal with death and dying horribly. We deal with grief horribly. We don't give people permission. We allow a small window to deal with the necessities and get your closure and have your services. And then for, you know, a week or so after that, everyone asks how you're doing, what do you need, whatever you need, call me, you know, I'll be there, I'll call you, et cetera, et cetera. 2.5 weeks later, your phone barely rings. You get an occasional text, an occasional email, an occasional phone, because everyone else's life has gone back to normal. They're sad for you, and they empathize to their capacity, but their lives haven't changed. So when you cross their mind, they do get a little sad, and they say, "Oh, what how's he doing? Let me give her a call." But most don't. And in that expression of "what can I do? Call me if you need me," I wish I could remove that from the lexicon. You know, I want people to say, "I will call you. I will check on you." Or I want people to drop a card in the mail, drop a meal on the front step, drop off flowers, mow the lawn, come over and ask to babysit the kids, drop a bottle of wine and donuts. Just do something. Because the one thing that I need, that Claire needed, was her husband back.
Right.
That's the only thing I wanted. That's the only thing I could have verbalized. Call me if you need anything. I need him. Can you go up there and get him? You can't. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, having more dialogue about grief and loss and emotion and vulnerability, you know, it crosses so many sectors. You know, the losing a partner is major, but this applies to grief of all kinds, you know, and allowing oneself to be vulnerable, expose how you feel, and have people be able to accept your truth and stand in it with you. That's important.
Yeah. What are some of the, I want to go around the horn and ask the question, what are some of the resources would you suggest for coping or adjusting or healing in the face of loss? What were some of the resources you turned to when adjusting to a life without your loved ones?
For me, it was really hard. Again, I didn't fit the particular demographic. Every support group that I reached out to and found, unfortunately, even though we all had loss, I encountered older women or older people with flown and grown children. And they had grandchildren, perhaps. So here I was, in my prime with a 3-year-old. And although in the early stages, I had no particular desire to date, again, fall in love or marry, I also wasn't dead. I was 35. So I knew that at some point I would hopefully rise from the ashes, mend my heart back together and be ready to share love again. So I was in meetings with people who were, death and doom, and which I understood, but it just wasn't where I was. So for me, thankfully, the internet was there. I was able to find support groups for young widowed people. And I know that sounds almost like we should all have, something to talk about. And we kind of did, but we kind of didn't. So I found a lot of support, especially in military groups. That was the only area where there were a large population of young widows, unfortunately. And so, my best advice to new widows, I do a lot of new widow, I don't want to call it mentoring, that sounds kind of creepy, but new widow support. Helping, I guess. People call me the grief girl, and I'll just get random texts and emails like, hey, somebody at my church husband just died, can you call her? Or so-and-so, my neighbor, what should I say? And I help, but I end up talking to probably 2 to 3 new widows a week, especially with COVID. And I give them the very basics. It's going to get worse before it gets better. You must stay hydrated. Even if you don't eat a drop of food in the next 2 weeks, you have to drink some water. You need to write things down. You need to talk to your doctor about a prescription medication to help you sleep, because without sleeping and without eating, you're going to be 100% worse. And you have to find a support circle. You have to figure out who in your inner circle is really a helper, who in your inner circle will allow you to be completely vulnerable. And then you have to ask them to be that for you. And most people need some kind of therapeutic aid. So I went to a therapist and I wrote and I colored. Those are my things, something to get it out.
Yeah. Kat, what would you suggest? I know that you're with the work that you do, you're creative, you turn to literature. What other, avenues of support would you tell someone to lean towards?
So I will say this, there's a lot of terrible ass grief help out here, in the sense of, what Taya talked about, like, you don't ask someone who's grieving, is there anything I can do? That is absolutely not helpful. If I just lost someone, like she said, the one thing I want, you can't get from me, and now making me responsible for making it easy for you to help me is not helpful. And so I actually lost friends when Sophie died, because people were really, it's funny, people have these expectations of how I was going to be. And when I didn't show up in the way that they thought I should be, it was like this poking the bear to see if, something would happen. It was absolutely absurd. And at the time, I ended up feeling really bad because I wasn't having the reactions that they wanted me to. And it really took a friend who was new, who had no expectations, who didn't have sort of these preconceived notions to say, you could do whatever the hell you want to do, and I got your back. And that was really helpful. I think a lot of times, and she said it brilliantly, funerals are not the only way to grieve. And I think I really wish, I have to say, being able to, my biggest prayer when my sister got really, really sick, she had a lot of issues, but there was a point where we were at ICU and I stood outside in the hospital hallway, and I basically told God, I was like, look, I can't fight you for her, but what I don't want is, I do not want her dying in a hospital, and I do not want some cold steel table morgue type of thing. I will not be able to recover from that. So the gift that I got was having her at home. And what I have found is that I have become sort of the person that people call when they're dealing with someone who is dying and they're in hospice, because I've been through it. And I have this thing about make it a good death. And so we have organized playlists that we all play at the same time based on, a loved one's favorite music, where whoever that person is, like, a friend of ours recently lost her mother last year. And so I was like, all right, we're going to play her music. You tell us what you're playing and we're going to amplify that energy wherever we are. And there were like 6 of us. And so we played everything, and we got her to celebrate her mother through song. And we just kept texting and sending gifts and playing the music. And we did all of that. And it was the most amazing surge of energy that helped her move into this space. But we don't have enough ritual. Like, I really wish we could find a better way when it's possible to spend more time with the body before you have to take it away and do all the things. Because I think that being able to look my sister in the face and tell her, you know what, I will be okay. Go to mom. Mom's got you. I'll be okay. That was probably one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And so I think the rituals around acknowledging that death, even when it comes when we don't want it, is part of the cycle. I think this is where ancestral worship and altars can be really helpful. I sat with my ancestors on Monday, and I talked to my mother, and I had a really long conversation about the shit that I'm upset about. And it was hard, but it was helpful. And so I think giving people permission to connect. I've had students who have lost parents, and then 2 weeks later they're back in school, and I'm like, what are you doing here? True. And they're like, well, I got to finish. And I'm like, but you just lost your father. And I remember one student in particular was very close to her father. And I said, you know what? Just because he's physically not here doesn't mean you can't talk to him. And she just busted out crying because everyone had told her, get over it. He's dead. Move on. And so I do think there has to be a space for ritual. I am an advocate of talking to your people out loud and not worrying about who cares, who sees, or whatever. And I do think creating that connection and understanding in your mind how they continue to live on in this transformative space is a really important way to heal. And I also think having that one, you just need one good friend who's like, boo, whatever you need, I got you. It doesn't have to be a crew. It just needs that one person who doesn't care. Like, I got cussed out by one friend who because I was upset about not being able to see my mother in my dream. And she literally was like, well, why do you keep expecting for that to happen? It was a very traumatic experience, and it ruined our friendship. Because I was grieving and looking for things in a way spiritually that she didn't
understand.
Yeah. And so it just didn't work. And so it really, because no one, very few times we're prepared for this. There's no way. But what I realized is that the one friend that was new had figured me out in this very short period of time where my talk about seeing my mother in my dreams was not odd to her. She was like, well, have you drank water today? Did you juice? Go juice something. She would tell me to go juice something because she knew I was a juicer. Go juice something. And so she had picked up on things that people that had known me so much longer had not picked up on. And that understanding was really kind of what kept me from completely going over the edge, because in my case, there was an identity crisis because she wasn't my daughter, but in a lot of ways I was her mother. And so it was confusing. It was really confusing.
Well, they knew the old you. I'm sorry. I was going to say.
No, go for it. Yeah.
There's a phrase I hate, but it makes sense, and it's new normal.
Yeah.
And so I talk about anyone who knew me well before June 9th of 2012 and people who know me since. I will always be Taya, but people who know me as Markel's widow versus people who meet me later, especially people who learn me much, like now I have a boyfriend now. So people who meet me now and my boyfriend, and if there's no space in the conversation to explain him, I may say something like, oh, my late husband or my husband. I'm sometimes calling him my husband. And people are like, but she's standing with a boyfriend. So the idea is that in the space of grief, oftentimes the newest relationships give you the most strength and the permission because they don't have a preconceived notion of you. And so they see you above your grief and they try to honor what they see in you and then allow you space to grieve as you will. People who know you want to see how they already know are responding in crisis.
Exactly.
And they don't mean it maliciously. They really don't, but they don't know what else to do. And so they're expecting, if you're always the giver, you're the friend who gets your college friends together, but if you don't call that week, everybody, well, I mean, we know her husband died, but, you know, she still didn't call. Well, I mean, I'm not her.
Right.
I'm not her anymore. You know,
Right.
I'm a completely different person.
Right.
My core is the same, but everything about me is different. You know, and in terms of my other point, as she was saying, we don't deal with the rituals well at all. And we as a society fail to support people after the fact. Again, after the funeral, after the week, after the month, because, you know, most places don't have bereavement leave. Most people either go back to work too soon or they stay away unpaid. You know, the financial implication of losing a partner is devastating, as we are in, you know, the average two household, you know, paycheck household, you know, childcare issues, health issues. Most people have to leave their home, downsize, change states, you know, your commute change. Maybe one car gets, you know, taken away or repossessed. Did he have a will? Can you even drive that car? Your joint bank account was really in your husband's name, but because he didn't have a will, the bank says you can't touch it. So when all of that is happening and everybody else kind of gets back to business, and you have to go back to work, but nothing about your life is the same and nor ever will be, grief takes on much deeper implications. And most people, especially widows, fall into complicated grief because no one around them understands.
Darryl, with your positioning in Texas legislature, you've worked with in politics, you work in healthcare, you understand, you've worked with people, you've lobbied for people who have health issues or healthcare issues. Where are we politically, or even, you know, legislatively, or just in society in general, for honoring people who need the time off or need to advocate for themselves, with space or resources so that they can properly deal with health issues, and even by extension dealing with life after losing a loved one?
I believe, well, it's not a belief. The fact is that the almighty dollar, unfortunately, runs everything, and in a quest for corporations and companies and business to maximize their profits, they put profits over people, and as a result, your bereavement leave is non-existent, because the longer you're away, the less billable hours that they have, the less productivity that they have. And it's idealistic, but we have to come to a point to where people's emotions and their lives and the comfortability of their lives are more important than the profits and profit sharing. And make no mistake about it, government is a business. As a lobbyist, you never find a lobbyist for poor people. You never find a lobbyist for those that are last, lonely, and left behind. You find a lobbyist for those who have means, and it's unfortunate. I remember the late Congressman Mickey Leland used to always say the elected official should be the lobbyist for those who have nothing. And until we start electing some people with that are morally grounded, and I'm not saying that these people have no morals. I'm saying that until we start electing those that are completely morally grounded, who believe in a level emotional mind um, to get to with their employees, then we will still stay where we are, where the
Yeah.
dollar is more important than your emotional health and well-being.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the idea is that grief hits us all. That's the point that I've always like not understood. I mean, everybody dies, not to be, cynical, but we're all going to die. And the biggest thing that I help in my widow advocacy is the idea that all marriages end in death or divorce. So let's get prepared, right? I mean, honestly, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I need you to love as hard as you can, but to plan for the other side.
Yeah.
That doesn't take the grief away, but it just takes some of the stress layers. So then, as Darryl said, it's not convenient or popular. It's not something that people want to lobby for. I've reached out to, tons of Maryland lawmakers, working on widow advocacy, and no one wants to champion the challenge because they haven't lost a partner. See, it's one of those things, kind of like we were saying about COVID, how it feels really surreal to some people and it feels really far away until it hits someone in their family. And then you go, damn, it is strong. It is serious, until someone loses their partner and you go, wow, she's destroyed. He's destroyed. And then what?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so thankful that my Clair or my Cliff, depending on what day it is. Some days Michelle is my Clair and some days she is my Cliff. We go back and forth plenty. And this is something we actually talk about. We talk about the importance of ritual. We do honor our personal ancestors here in our home. Well, in the box somewhere, our personal ancestors are somewhere in this house. They're everywhere. We honor her parents. We honor my grandmothers, my grandfathers. And we talk about the energy of life and the energy of death. I'm certain I've seen ghosts in my life. I've turned my head real quick and I'm like, yep, there you go. You over there and you don't mess with me, I ain't gonna mess with you. But the one spirit that comes to me every once in a while, sometimes it's in dreams, not as frequently as it used to, right after March 9th, 1995, which was the day my grandmother passed. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Thelma Lee Vest, was my honey. I called her honey. When I was in college, I don't know where it came from. I just started calling her. Well, it came from the fact that she used to send me letters. She used to write me letters and pick honeysuckle petals and put them in the envelope with the letter. And then she would start to sign Love Honey. And I just started calling her honey eventually. But she passed away my first year of graduate school. And I had just left Virginia and moved to California. And I'd never lived outside of Virginia. And in my first year, the spring semester of my first year in grad school, right after Christmas, she had a stroke, her first stroke. She was in the hospital for a minute, and I was devastated because I was 3,000 miles away and I had no way home, really. My family really wasn't in a position to, fly me across country on whim. And it was like, a Band-Aid, some Scotch tape, and the grace of God that I was even there. And I remember moving into a studio apartment, and I was getting my new telephone line put in. And at 9:30 a.m., my phone rang as the technician was connecting my line. Phone rang, and he looked at me and he was like, have you given someone your phone number already? And I was like, I don't even know the phone number. So you haven't given me anything. I don't know it by heart. I don't know about nothing. And the phone rang and it just kept ringing. He was like, are you going to answer it? And I was like, no, I don't think I will. I don't, and I'm thinking he's just testing the line. We're both kind of, it all happened so quickly, but it also felt like it took forever to resolve that neither one of us knew why the phone was ringing. And then it just stopped. And it was 9:30 a.m. I'll never forget it because later that day, my dad called and I was in my office. I just finished teaching my last class. I just finished my classes and I had a rehearsal to go to. So it's kind of like running anyway. And he called and he said, well, hey. And I said, hey. He goes, he checked in with me. He was asking me how I was doing. I guess to him, I sound exceptionally okay. Because I'm thinking I'm just doing a roll call of, yeah, I had class this morning and I have to go to a rehearsal right now and da-da-da-da-da. And he was like, wait. Have you talked to your mom today? And I was like, well, I talked to her a couple days ago, and she told me grandma was doing okay, and I spoke to my grandma actually, and the last thing she said to me was, hurry up and become famous so you can fly me out to California for a vacation. And he said, your grandmother passed away today at 12:30 in Virginia. 12:30 in Virginia is 9:30. And when I tell you I tore up my office, first of all, I didn't care what Cal State Long Beach thought about the damage I was about to do to that space. But my office mate, she was just down the hall and she kind of heard the conversation, and she came down the hall and she just mouthed, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." And she just closed the door. She didn't come in. She just closed the door because she saw it in my face. I just could not handle anybody, anything. And not long after that, my grandmother started coming to me in my dreams, and very vividly, like she would hug me, and I would wake up thinking I'd been hugged, right? And I think because I was so far away from home, I didn't have any reason for 3 years to seek counseling, because in my mind, my grandmother was still at home. I just made it so.
Right.
I wasn't seeing her anyway.
Right.
So I graduated May 2007, May 1997, and I moved back east. And by this point, 3 years had passed. A smooth 3 years from her passing, or 2 years from her passing had passed. And I go to her house, and I fall apart like it had just happened. And I say all that to say is that you have to grieve. You have to pull the plug on whatever you think is holding you together. And if it's going back to work right away, or going back to school right away, or, I have to maintain my house because I got 11 other people depending on my keeping my shit together, you've got to pull that plug, because it's going to pull itself at some point anyway.
It'll find you.
It'll find a way out, right? And you
cannot
may not,
outrun it.
A, have control over it, and B, it won't service you. So I say all that to say that, as Taya has so eloquently put, death is coming anyway. And if you're partnered with someone, that is ending in either death or divorce. And Michelle and I have had these conversations where it's like, what you gonna do if I go first?
Good.
And she always answers the same way, every time. We're gonna become vampires, and so we ain't gonna never die. And that joke just, keeps the levity involved. It keeps it from being the conversation of death and dying, and a conversation of, well, let's talk about our spirits. Let's talk about our relationship. Let's talk about what brings us joy, even in discussing this hard thing, right? And I suspect, if we know anything about Cliff and Clair, that conversation, he being a physician, I'm fairly certain a conversation of some sort had to have taken place, even though they're fictional characters. These things never happen for these people, but the representatives that they embody, you have to have these conversations, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, go for it. Yep.
The thing about Cliff and Clair, though, is that they're both very well off. So if Claire decides, I'm going to take a month or two, or hell, I'm going to lead a practice at this point, she has the ability to do that. Because sometimes I think we forget that there's, even in death or grief, there are certain people who are given a little bit more grace than others.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Depending on how you die, depending on how old, or depending on the situation. So we decide which people deserve more time off than others. Yeah. And so that's the other part that I think, that I appreciated about the conversation, but that I also thought about it. Like, if Claire decides that she doesn't want to be a lawyer or a judge, if she wants to take time off as a judge, she literally is financially capable of doing
She's
it.
fine. Yeah.
And they more than likely, because of their education and their background, have willed everything out, have, put the financial things in place. The house is probably paid for. It's a whole thing, So I do think those conversations are important because, Taya, what you're saying about just the loss of income from that other partner, like that in itself is devastating. And that disrupts your ability. You can't grieve when you're worried about whether or not you're going to keep your house.
Cannot.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
And like I said, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that reminds me of, and I push back very strongly. Everybody has a platform, and I'm okay with that, and everybody heals the way they need to. But I push back strongly on option B by Sheryl Sandberg that she wrote after her husband died, because she unfortunately told widows to kind of just get back out there and just handle it, just buck up, you'll be fine. And but she's a millionaire and she is fine. Right. And she had a trust fund and he had a 7-digit life insurance. So financially, her ability to even focus and be fine is completely changed based on your financial worth. Right. So that conversation, and it is another, a classism issue that then makes advocating for widows so much harder. Because those in power can't possibly understand how the loss of one paycheck even throws some families in turmoil. So I get that. Hopefully those two did have the conversations though, and Claire's grace and ability to welcome Eunice into their home at the end, obviously based on his wishes and some conversations that took a lot of strength. So I'm hoping they had talked things out in detail.
I love the Eunice thing because we tend to think that Claire is above so much. But the way you read that wood barrette, she calls him one more time. I was like, Claire is just petty as the rest of us. I love it. It really humanizes her because, Claire is often presented as this unflappable Black mother.
One-dimensional,
and she, she can get rugged, like when she threatened to box the shit out of Denise when Denise got real disrespectful when it was time for the car. When you wanted to go have big fun with the rest of the kids had to put it back, so we saw these parts like, oh shit, Claire, you're gonna whoop somebody's ass. This is But petty, jealous Claire, it's hard to imagine. So I love that you put that in there. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, Velicia.
Terésa and I went back and forth about Claire and about this situation and about the lead up. And I still want to see her as this. She was a pawn. Two families decided that they belong together. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a lawyer. Because back in the day, families had more input. You didn't just marry who you wanted to marry. There was a discussion and it was agreed upon. And so I like to kind of give her this credit for, she did some underhanded shysty stuff, but the team decided. And then I think with Cliff still having these feelings, like, why didn't he just go with his heart? I like to lean back on, well, the family decided that she's from a much better family. This is a much better match. And that's just the way things were done. But she had some part in it. I had to ultimately. I love it. Terésa really delved into this thing and dissected it, and the dates and the fact that about this barrette means that you knew that they were already, and that leads to accountability.
Claire was shady. Claire was shady. She stole them.
She was a little shady.
Claire knew what she was doing when Eunice ran up over that hill. She knew what she was doing.
She knew.
I love it. It's brilliant.
Michelle and I, we have these conversations of, we in our wedding vows, divorce is not an option. So death is the only way either one of us are going out of here, right? And it's one of those things where I suspect as much as you can prepare, there's no ever getting
absolutely
for that. we want to ask Taya
Yes.
the weekly question.
All right now.
Okay.
Who is your favorite Huxtable? And if different, which Huxtable are you most like?
Ooh, my favorite Huxtable. Ooh, that's hard. Actually, it's funny because my son, we started watching the Cosby Show on Amazon Prime. All the seasons are there, so we're up to season 4 now. So rewatching it with him, he's 11, and so introducing the topics and the jump off conversations that he and I have after the fact is very interesting. I think there's a lot of teaching value in the series itself. So now that I'm watching it again while I'm older, I think I'm probably most like, I guess, Clair, really. Yeah, I think so. Well, my mother is Clair, so I think I'm like my mother, so that's why I say that.
Sure.
And then who was my favorite character? I actually really did love Theo's character. I felt like, in a house with, all the women, he and Cliff, especially a lot of the early stuff, where he was finding his own way and sort of developing into the character. Because I think I'd forgotten so much of his younger stuff. I remember him older with Cockroach as the best friend, but I'd forgotten a lot of his younger shaping stuff. As the annoying little brother who got the box of jokes in the mail, that kind of thing. So in my, second or third watching of it now, he's my favorite character.
Yeah. I feel very little shame in deciding to go back and watch The Cosby Show again from the beginning. I'd say if you'd asked me about 5 years ago, would you binge it? I probably would have said no, but I think I'm going to go write a book so that I can give myself permission to revisit the Huxtable family again. And so that's actually really how this book and this story and this fan fiction came to be, is that it was around the time when a lot of shows were starting to find their way onto streaming platforms, whether it was Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or whatever. And so, all these licensing deals were happening, and you were able to watch all the seasons of The Golden Girls, or all the seasons of Friends, or all the seasons of Cosby Show, and feeling some kind of way, feeling like, if somebody, am I gonna have to sneak episodes so that I don't feel that shame of supporting something that clearly folks are looking to cancel. And so here we are. I decided to dive deeper into the Huxtable family, and still in my research having to go back and watch some of those episodes, in particular those episodes that reference Eunice Chantilly. Just preparing one day to meet the Velicia Moore-Toliver, who's going to take me to task and go toe to toe about her and Clair. I want to thank you all for joining us. Next week we have 2 special episodes. It's our 2 final episodes. On Monday, after the weekend, on Monday, we are reading our final written chapter, or final chapter written by me, I should say, chapter 12, Cliff. And this is the chapter where we discover how Cliff he actually died. And as the episode setup says here, Cliff is murdered. And we'll unveil how he actually died at the end of this tale. Panel discussion. Our final panel looks at the tethered, Cliff versus Bill versus Cliff. And the tethered is in reference to Jordan Peele's film Us, as we're examining a person and their exact opposite in the other space. And we're going to really pick apart the phenomenon of people confusing and blending Cliff Huxtable with Bill Cosby. And then on Thursday of next week is our final episode. And in that episode, we will hear from the Reverend Dr. Carolyn Gordon. She wrote the epilogue for the book. It's the eulogy for Cliff Huxtable, and she will be performing that on Thursday. We've gotten to the point now where the weekend just isn't quite the same. We've been in quarantine, as Taya pointed out, since March 15th. Well, most of us who've had the desire to stay home and flatten the curve, we've stuck it out so far. It looks like we're going to have to continue to stick it out. But please do. But do it in good health. Find ways to release the valve that you need, that pressure valve of being quarantined, of being stuck in the house, of being in constant fear of catching this virus or losing a loved one or having to endure pain of any sort. Find your way to peace and some joy. I hope, because it is a holiday weekend, you find something awesome to do. I don't know if I'm a big proponent of celebrating the 4th of July, and I won't really get into the politics of that, but hell, it's still a holiday and it's still time to be festive. I know I'm going to spend tomorrow watching Hamilton repeatedly. So find something that's going to bring you joy. That's the way we get through this. All right. Be good to yourself. Be good to other people by wearing a mask. Love you. Talk to you later. Bye.